My name is Lynn Sylvan. I'm with EVEN, the Eugene Veg Education Network. As most of you know, we're an official 501c3 vegan education and outreach nonprofit. Since 2005, we've been acting as a vegan resource to those people interested in transitioning to a plant-based lifestyle. I'm glad that you're all here today. We have such a wonderful presentation for you, but I also want to thank some of the folks that have made this possible. I want to thank Molly and Rob and Eric and Lindsay, our videographers, and I also want to thank Scott in the Eugene Library. I want to thank our EVEN volunteers, Kim, Hilliard, Chloe, Heather, and Luca, for all their help. And special thanks to the EVEN members, supporters, donors, and volunteers who have made this wonderful presentation possible and free to you. Erica Meier is the Executive Director of Compassion Over Killing, a nonprofit animal protection organization based in Washington, D.C. She had a long flight in. Since 1995, Compassion Over Killing has worked to expose farm animal abuse and promote veg-friendly eating. And they do this by employing a variety of strategies, including hard-hitting undercover investigations, groundbreaking proactive litigation, successful corporate campaigns, and empowering public outreach programs, such as you see here. In addition to ending the egg industry's misleading animal care certified claim under Erica's leadership, Compassion Over Killing has persuaded food giants, including Subway, Dunkin' Donuts, Boca Foods, and Morningstar Farms, to add vegan options to their menus. Before working at Compassion Over Killing, Erica served as an animal control officer in Washington, D.C., rescuing sick, injured, and homeless animals, as well as enforcing animal protection laws. Erica has also appeared in several major news stories on CNN, on ABC's Nightline News, The Washington Post, the LA Times, and many more. These accomplishments, along with others, earned her the coveted National Animal Rights Hall of Fame Award in 2013. Would you please give a very warm welcome to Erica Meier.
Thank you guys all for coming. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Lynn. I very much appreciate it. You guys having a good afternoon so far?
Yes.
All right, make sure this is on. All right, so my name, as Lynn introduced me, is Erica Meier, the Executive Director of Compassion Over Killing, and we focus on farm animal protection issues, and that involves uncovering how farm animals are treated inside factory farms, as well as empowering people to choose compassion. So I want to ask, how many people in the room are familiar with EVEN, have been to an EVEN event before? So a good handful of people. And I know Lynn has done a really great job with others in the community to talk about these issues and help people learn about the benefits of leaving animals off our plates. So I wanted to just take a minute before I begin to give a round of applause to Lynn and everyone at EVEN. Thank you so much for organizing this and for all you do in the community. If you're not yet active with EVEN, I hope after this presentation and meeting Lynn today that you will become more active. So to start off with, I want to ask you guys if you know how many factory farmers it takes to screw in a light bulb. It's a really serious question. I'm not sure why you're laughing. So one, any other guesses?
As many as the government will subsidize?
As many as the government will subsidize. You're all wrong. It takes none because they want to keep us in the dark. And that is the reality. The reality is that factory farmers today, animal agribusiness, big ag as it's commonly referred to, is working very hard to prevent consumers from seeing the realities of factory farms. In fact, they are not only trying to mislead consumers with a lot of marketing claims, but they are also working on a state-by-state level to criminalize undercover investigations of factory farms and slaughterhouses. They are so eager to make sure you don't see what happens, that rather than prevent the abuses that are routinely documented inside these facilities, they simply don't want you to find out about them. So that is the reality of where our food is coming from today, because it is so much easier for them to sell their Happy Meal and to go out and get kids to sing how great it is to be an Oscar Meier wiener and to have you buy a bucket of chicken or a drive-through breakfast sandwich than it is to tell the truth about where these animals are actually coming from. From the tiny wire cages where egg-laying hens are forced to spend their entire lives barely even able to move, to chickens who are raised for their meat. These animals are bred and drugged to grow so large, so quickly, that they often collapse under the own weight of their bodies. It's a very unnatural, rapid growth. They're slaughtered chickens who you eat in the grocery stores or in restaurants. They're only 2 months old when they're slaughtered. So what we are doing today is we're talking about why more and more people are eager to learn about vegetarian eating. They're lining up to learn about plant-based benefits, whether it's because of health reasons, environmental reasons, or animal reasons. So how many of you in the room today are a vegan and have been vegan for a fair while? So a good number of you. And how many of you in the room who are not yet vegan, or maybe not even yet vegetarian, have thought about it, have family and friends talking about it, or interested in learning more about vegetarian and plant-based eating? So what we're going to talk about today is that growth in plant-based eating that we're seeing on a consumer level and why we're seeing that change happen. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the horrors of factory farming because it is pretty depressing. Many of you have probably already seen that. So I'm going to just get into some of the details about why we're seeing a shift in our dietary choices, whether it's our health concerns. So a recent study came out that talked about how a global adoption of a vegan diet could save 8 million lives by 2050. That's how many lives could be saved by a healthier plant-based diet, and that doesn't include the billions of animal lives that would be saved if we switched to a plant-based diet. In addition, a lot of people are talking about these issues because of the environmental destruction that's caused by factory farming. It's very resource intensive. It causes a lot of pollution, a lot through the manure, through the pesticides that are used to grow the crops that are then harvested and fed to farm animals. It's a very, very destructive practice, and it is considered one of the leading industries causing pollution and using up resources today. The United Nations, this is not a bastion of environmental rights. The United Nations has repeatedly said that adopting a vegan diet is one of the most effective ways we can help protect the planet today. And of course, people who care about animals are a big reason why people are leaving animals off their plates. So we know a lot of us in this room might have dogs or cats at home or grew up with an animal in our homes who we cared for. And we recognize when that animal is happy. We know when this animal is sad or sick, needs to go to the vet, might be lonely. We like to play with them. We know when they're tired. And so we see the emotions. These are all emotions that we can connect to in animals inside our homes. But in our society, we've drawn a line between the animals who we want to bring into our home and care for and the animals we find it acceptable to raise and slaughter for consumption. But we know scientifically that these animals all experience the same emotions: the joy, the happiness, the sorrow, the grief. They care for each other. We know that these animals have full and happy lives when given the opportunity. And on factory farms, we deny these animals the ability to perform most of their very natural behaviors. We even know pigs are smarter than dogs. This has been shown study after study after study. Pigs are smarter than dogs. So when we look at our own dietary choices, a lot of the habits we've developed are habits we've developed because our society encourages us to, and also because these companies continue to market these products to us over and over again. It becomes very normalized. But no matter where you are on this path, whether you are choosing to adopt Meatless Monday, whether you are a vegetarian, whether like Mark Bittman, you might be vegan before 6, or if you're like me and a handful of other people in this room, you're vegan before 6 and then you're vegan after 6. Every time we choose a meat-free meal, we are making a difference for animals, for our own health, and for the environment. And that is such an important message to make, because there's a growing number of people in our society not ready to yet make a full commitment, but we have to encourage them down this path, because every meat-free meal makes an important difference. So meat consumption in the United States, we are one of the top meat consuming countries in the entire world. We're second in the world behind Luxembourg. I'm not sure what Luxembourg is eating more than we are, but we are second in the world in meat consumption. And we have seen since the 1960s, the U.S. Department of Agriculture tracks our consumption, and meat consumption for decades since the Depression has been going up and up and up every year. But in 2007, it started to go down, and it's been plummeting since then. We're seeing a shift in consumer habits that is leading to fewer animals being raised and killed for food. Right now, USDA is estimating that the consumption of meat is dropping by over 12% in the past several years in the United States, and as a result of meat consumption shifting and dropping in the United States, there are more than 400 million fewer animals who are raised and killed for food a couple years ago with the most recent statistics that we have. But absolutely, please. That's you. Yeah, so our dietary choices are not just better for our own health and the environment. There is a direct translation in the number of animals raised and killed for food. We're seeing this number go down, and that is really encouraging news to see. We also know that this shift is happening not just because more people are choosing a vegan diet, but because people are shifting their diets overall. Right now, a recent study by the meat industry showed that 15% more Americans this year think that meat is less healthy than they thought a year ago. So meat is starting to be seen as an unhealthy food increasingly across the board. We also know from the meat industry study that 21% of people this year think that plant-based protein is healthier than they used to think it was. And so now they're thinking more positively about plant-based foods, and that you can actually get protein from plants and not just meat. We're also seeing a shift in meat eaters' dietary choices. Right now, 70% of meat eaters choose a meat-free meal at least once a week, and that's up 22% than it was a year ago. And we also know from these studies that 55% plan to eat more plant-based foods this year than they were planning on eating last year. So we're seeing a shift in the way consumers are thinking about meat, the way they're thinking about plants, and it's translating into an increased consumption of plant-based foods. So we know that these foods are being touted by a great number of people in our society from a celebrity level. We have Al Gore, who used to talk about how we can protect the planet, and he never really talked much about a plant-based diet. He's now vegan and talking about the benefits of being vegan. Venus and Serena Williams, two very well-known tennis champions. Cory Booker in the Senate, he's one of the first senators who's been an outspoken vegan talking about these issues. He's bringing more vegan options to the federal cafeterias as a result of this. He's also championing some laws to help protect animals. And we have MMA fighter Colleen Schneider, who is debunking all the myths about what it is to be a female vegan in the world of competitive fighting. So these shifts are all happening, and they're getting the support of people who are showing that you can live healthy lifestyles by not consuming animal products. And they're talking about these issues to audiences that someone like me will never be able to speak to. They're talking in the Senate, they're talking in the athletic world about these important issues. And we also know we're winning these issues because somebody like the governor, did you guys see this recent news? He talked about very recently about the benefits of plant-based eating for the environment, but he's now taking meat out of his diet. Arnold Schwarzenegger is now eating less meat. He might actually be vegetarian, possibly on his way to being vegan, but he is very openly talking about how we all need to reduce our meat consumption in order to protect the planet. These are all signs that we're winning. And it's not just celebrities, it's not just the statistics. We're seeing this shift happen in cities as well. Meatless Mondays is a concept. Does anyone know who founded Meatless Mondays? The idea of Meatless Mondays. So the idea of Meatless Mondays was actually founded by the US government in World War I. And then they brought it back during World War II, and it was a way to preserve resources, to use less resources during wartime. And then after World War II, the campaign sort of fell by the wayside. And in 2003, Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland brought it back as a public health issue. And they're working with organizations across the country, including ours, to work with cities to adopt Meatless Mondays resolutions. And the first city in the United States to adopt a Meatless Monday resolution was San Francisco. And shortly after that, being in Washington, D.C., we were jealous that San Francisco was first, so we worked with our city council and volunteers to get a Meatless Monday resolution in Washington, D.C., and this has spread across many cities across the country, including Los Angeles, adopted a Meatless Monday resolution. And the city of Los Angeles, after this was adopted, the school system was so impressed and had already been thinking about adding more vegetarian options to the menu because of interest from students, that they saw the resolution as an opportunity to fully embrace it, and they have adopted Meatless Mondays in the school systems of LA. It's the second largest school system in the country behind New York City, and they're now serving over 650,000 meat-free meals every single Monday to students across the LA Unified School System. And this is an interest that has spread to other cities as well, and a growing number of schools and cities are adopting Meatless Monday. And the idea of promoting from a governmental level, of endorsing the idea of eating fewer animals, is also right here in Eugene. Are you guys all familiar with the proclamation that had been signed? So this is really impressive and exciting news. Eugene is now behind the support of endorsing and getting more vegan options available for people. Oh, we even have an actual proclamation right here. I'm going to read part of it. So this was passed because of people like Lynn working with her team and getting the mayor on board to sign this proclamation. You guys can read this one here, I'm sure, right? So this is Vegan Awareness Year. 2016 right now in Eugene is Vegan Awareness Year. And it happened because Eugene Meier worked with and Lynn helped push this through to declare 2016 as Vegan Awareness Year. And it's a year dedicated to raising awareness of the impact individual choices have on the planet and all of its inhabitants. This is huge. Please give a round of applause to Ethan for getting this done. It is such an opportunity to talk about the benefits of plant-based eating from the environment. If you read the proclamation, it talks about the benefits for our health, for the environment, as well as for animals. And this gives a platform to talk about these issues on a more significant level. So I've been vegan for about 20 years, and when I first became vegan, it was not as easy as it is today. Going out to dinner, as an example, to a restaurant, most places didn't have many vegan options or didn't even know what it was. And you would go to a restaurant and they would literally, you would order something and then they would just take the main dish off and give you the side dish, which sometimes was a piece of parsley, maybe a baked potato. And we have seen such a shift in the availability of vegan options in stores across, or restaurants and stores across the country. It is moving from the margins to the mainstream, from fast food restaurants to 4-star dining. It has become a priority to put these options in the center of the menu. The Nation's Restaurant News, which is an industry publication, it's the top restaurant news publication. They had a cover story recently on meatless meals, and in this story it talked about the growth in the interest of vegan eating and how it was inevitable that a fast food chain, an all vegan fast food chain, would soon be opening up in the US. It was no longer a question of if it would happen, it was now a question of when. And this is Nation's Restaurant News, which is largely read by industry business owners who probably never thought about vegan eating until they're reading this issue that talks about the financial benefit of making sure there are vegan options, and it's such a powerful tool that restaurants are now catering just to vegans. To Restaurant News to talk about this is huge, to cater to vegans, and it will be a fast food chain nationwide in the very near future, and we're actually seeing that now happen. Menus across the country are adding vegan options, whether they're all vegan restaurants or vegan-friendly restaurants. Grocery stores, increasingly, you don't have to go around the corner to a health food store that's hard to find. You can now go to any major grocery store and find readily available plant-based options wherever you go, from the refrigerated section to the produce section to the frozen section. QSR is quick service restaurant. This is a fast food style journal for quick service restaurants. They just came out a couple months ago with a story titled "When Vegan Goes Mainstream." And in quick service restaurant news, they talk specifically about how plant-based eating is gaining attraction among the 98% of Americans who don't identify as vegans but are attracted to the cuisine's health and environmental benefits, not, of course, to mention its cool factor. So this is a recognition that this is an inevitable shift. Plant-based eating is in the mainstream. It is here to stay for a number of reasons. In that article, they talked about Veggie Grill. You guys have Veggie Grills in this area? No? It will happen soon, because Veggie Grill is a California-based all-vegan restaurant chain that is now opening up hundreds of restaurants nationwide in cities across the country. This is happening. They're in the process right now of opening up. They're only right now on the West Coast, but they have a plan to sweep through the country and open up hundreds of restaurants nationwide. And they say in that article that 70 to 80% of their customers aren't even vegetarian or vegan. The majority of their customers are meat eaters looking for a healthier, tasty, plant-based option. We're also seeing places like Chipotle offering a vegan sofrita and advertising how a vegan sofrita is what can unite vegans and carnivores together. They're heavily pushing their sofrita as an option for meat eaters to try and enjoy and get protein. And it is a flavorful option if you guys haven't tried it. It's easy to find. It's available nationwide in every Chipotle, making it easier and easier for people who aren't yet vegan to find vegan options. We're also seeing places like White Castle, which, if you're not familiar with White Castle, you might be more familiar with the movie. Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. It is a national restaurant chain as well. They're very known for their burgers. They recently added a veggie slider to their menu. It is an all-vegan patty that you can now order, and it was based on demand from their customers. Wendy's. Did you guys hear that Wendy's is now starting to roll out a black bean burger? The patty itself is vegan, and if you order it without the ranch topping, it will also be vegan. So Wendy's is on board, recognizing that consumers are asking for healthier plant-based options. Subway has been rolling out vegan options in over 1,000 stores nationwide, and they are putting out their own ads in the cities where they offer them, saying to get your vegan on. And in the stores where they are available, they are incredibly popular. They can barely keep them in stock. And that's a company we worked with. We also worked with Dunkin' Donuts, which is one of the largest coffee and baked goods chain in the country. They only recently, because of demand, added a dairy-free option for coffee drinks. You can now, in 75% of Dunkin' Donuts across the country, you can find almond milk on the menu, and they promoted it, putting it on their website that you asked and we've heard, and they made this change because they knew consumers were looking for it. We're now working with them, encouraging them to offer a vegan donut so people can come in and get a dairy-free coffee drink as well as a dairy and egg-free donut. And they're listening. This is an ongoing conversation. They understand it's what people want, and the more they'll hear from you, the more likely they will make this happen. Have you guys tried the Ben & Jerry's vegan ice cream yet? No? Yeah, some people have. Some haven't. So Ben & Jerry's is a company that has been pressured for years from various people, whether it's for vegan reasons, lactose intolerance, or because as a company that touts its environmental sustainability, dairy is not very sustainable and they should shift to plant-based options. And they heard enough from people after a change.org petition was started by some activists in the Virginia area. They just launched this petition that took off. And now Ben & Jerry's responded. They just rolled out 4 different, pretty incredible vegan ice cream options. If you haven't tried it, I highly, highly recommend it. Girl Scout cookies are going vegan. Did you guys know this? So they have a few different flavors. And I'm not that familiar with all of them, but one of them has always been vegan, just accidentally vegan. And then they use different companies to produce their cookies, and one of them started making vegan Thin Mints, and everyone loved them so much. And so both companies are now making all vegan Thin Mints, and they're now branching out and looking to remove dairy and eggs from more of their cookies to make them available to people who are looking for healthier options, vegan options. And by removing dairy and eggs, they're also removing a lot of the allergens. So they're making it widely available and allergen-free as well. So keep your eye out for that, because increasingly Girl Scout cookies are going vegan. And you know that Disney World even now has its own vegan and gluten-free bakery. So if you guys go to Disney World, you can get vegan cupcakes. It's all they sell in this cupcake shop. And most people have no idea that this is a vegan cupcake shop. And it's not just this, we're seeing an increase in the benefit, or the availability rather, of vegan options, but it's also, as I mentioned earlier, that an increasing number of consumers are looking at meat as a bad thing. They're seeing it more negatively. And a study came out a couple of years ago that talked about, they looked at social media conversations about meat and found that 43% of conversations about meat over the last 6 months were negative and often included such words as bad, concerns, and problems. So what one company did, Taco Bell, they decided that they were just going to stop using the word meat because it's a bad word. So they decided to change how they promoted their options and just call it protein so that they wouldn't have meat in the name. And after they did that, they actually realized that there was a growing demand for vegetarian options and vegan options at Taco Bell. And so they decided to go through their entire menu and look at their ingredients. And they now have a certified vegetarian menu with, I think it's over 26 different ingredients that are certified vegan. They actually went and got these items reviewed closely and certified so that when you go in there, you know what is vegan, you know what is vegetarian, and you can put together your own meal by knowing what ingredients you want them to combine into your taco or burrito. So they took the message from consumers, and they are now offering more options and putting this information out there readily available for consumers. And we're seeing this shift happen everywhere from, Beyond Meat is now introducing a burger that bleeds that has been selling out in stores nationwide. Corn, which is a UK-based company, they offer vegetarian options, and they've been doing this for decades, but all of their products have had egg and dairy. They're now making them vegan and slowly shifting their entire product line, introducing them in the US a few years ago. They're now introducing them into the UK. They're slowly shifting with enough consumer support their whole product line over. Johnny Rockets has a veggie burger. You can get at TCBY, you can get vegan yogurt now, and Pinkberry followed suit. And are you guys familiar with the company Just Mayo? They have different products out there. Hampton Creek is the name of the company producing these products. They have more than 3 dozen vegan products being rolled out in Walmart and Target nationwide over the next year. And you can find these options available in those stores. This industry is shifting dramatically. Studies have shown that the meat substitutes market is expected to be up to $5 billion by 2020, and the dairy-free market is expected to rise to $20 billion by 2020. So these industries are recognizing that this is where the consumer shift is happening. It's no longer considered a trend. This is a shift going towards the mainstream. The study specifically talks about how veggie burgers and non-dairy milks have escaped the realm of substitutes. They now appeal to the everyday consumer, and what was once formerly considered an alternative option could now take over the mainstream. And we're seeing that as these options are becoming available in mainstream restaurants and grocery stores. And I know you guys are really big fans of meatpoultry.com. So you may already be familiar with the article that I'm about to talk with you about. This is a business journal for meat and poultry industry representatives. And it's one of my favorite journals, I'll be honest. They had an article come out a couple of years ago that was titled, "Why Doesn't Industry," and they mean meat industry, "Why doesn't industry make meat analogs?" And in the article, they talked about how the primary reason people choose a vegetarian or vegan diet is to reduce animal suffering. They then went on to say that if consumers are going to buy these meat analogs, you might as well be the one selling them. And then they concluded that don't fight them, join them. Here is an opportunity. This is the meat industry talking about the consumer shift towards veggie options, and how if they want to stay relevant, they're going to have to shift their business model. And we are seeing them join in on this. So you guys, I just talked about Hampton Creek. So Just Mayo is a product that has been rolling out in stores nationwide, and it's called Just Mayo. It's an all plant-based mayonnaise. And the mayonnaise industry got a little jealous, and they actually, Unilever, which owns Hellmann's, sued Hampton Creek over the use of the word mayo, saying, you can't use that word mayo because it's not mayo. Mayo has eggs. And Hampton Creek said, oh no, we can use mayo. And they duked it out a little bit in courts, and actually Unilever decided to settle the case, and Hampton Creek accepted the settlement. Some minor changes had to be made to their label, but they basically won. Hampton Creek won this argument, and after the settlement happened, the case was dropped. Hellmann joined the fight, and they actually now have a vegan mayo on the market because they recognize that this is something so valuable that consumers want. They decided they might as well join in on it, and now they make a vegan mayo.
Veganese, they call it. The kiva, veganese.
Yeah, I don't know the exact name of it, but
That's what it is.
yeah.
I've been buying for years.
So Hellmann's is now rolling out this product nationwide, and another example of how we're seeing the meat industry join the other side is with a former CEO, Executive Don Thompson. He was a former CEO of McDonald's. He is now on the executive board of an all-vegan company, Beyond Meat. He went from McDonald's to McVegan. He is now supporting and endorsing and helping promote the sales of an all-vegan meat product. But not everyone is joining in. So there is this meat-free company called Herbivorous Butcher based in the Minnesota area. I don't know if you guys have seen them. When they rolled out, they received a lot of national media attention for their what they call the first ever vegan butcher shop. And they make products that include these, savory looking steaks and jerky and these other items. And the meat industry caught wind of this because of the national media attention that this company was getting. So another common blog that I'm sure you guys read, National Hog Farmer. They have their own blog called the National Hog Farmer blog, and they wrote about, after all the national media attention on this vegan butcher shop, they wrote an article titled "Vegan Butcher, Just Plain Wrong." And in that article, they talk specifically about how the vegan butcher shop is unethical. And so the pork industry is recognizing, they wrote about this because they are nervous that this is something that is being widely accepted by consumers, and it is getting this message of choosing a healthier, more compassionate, and more sustainable diet is making progress in the United States. And so the pork industry had nothing else to say but a vegan butcher shop being unethical. Not that long ago when people thought about being a vegetarian or vegan, I don't know how many of you have been vegetarian or vegan for a long time. But one of the questions I still get today is, but what do you eat? What are the options that you eat? And for someone who's been vegan or vegetarian for a long time, it seems very natural to know what to choose. But it's true that as a growing number of people who've grown up, I grew up on a meat-based diet, and so I know that people still have questions wondering what it is that we eat. But the changes that we're seeing in this country aren't happening because people are just asking questions and making things happen. They're happening because consumers like us are making them happen. We know that when most people think about going vegetarian or vegan, they think it's a struggle, they think it's an uphill battle, they think it's a sacrifice. And we know that vegan eating is fun and it's accessible and it's delicious and it actually increases your energy levels. And so as vegans, we're not just sitting around relaxing, seeing these shifts happen on their own. We are out there, we are the ones making them happen. It's because people like you, whether you're vegan or not, when you ask for these options, you are making these changes happen. We started working with companies across the country, national, and then we shifted to international companies, asking them to make changes. In DC, as a DC-based organization, we originally worked with a lot of restaurants in the area, asking them to add vegan options to the menu. And the first few restaurants we worked with, it was a bit of a challenge. And then once they saw how successful it was much easier to go to the next restaurant. They wanted to see the same bump in sales. And so we're at the point in DC where a lot of restaurants are now contacting us saying, I want to offer vegan options, but I don't know what to put on the menu. So now we work with them when they contact us. But we decided rather than just going from restaurant to restaurant, as a national organization, we might be able to put pressure on national companies to make changes. So we, several years ago, reached out to our first company, Morningstar Farms. And it's a company that makes all vegetarian products, but they use a lot of eggs and they use a lot of dairy in their products. And so we encourage them to remove egg and dairy from their products, or at least greatly reduce the amount of those products and add, by default, adding some vegan options to their menu line. And when we first reached out to them, they seemed interested in the idea. They recognized the benefits immediately, but after months of dialogue, they finally said, you know, we understand this issue. We agree it's important, but we just don't hear from consumers about it. And if we don't hear from consumers about it, it is never going to become a priority. And we immediately thought, well, that's what it takes. We will get consumers to contact you. And we did. We put a website out with their 800 number and their email addresses, and people began contacting them, and the company decided a few months after getting feedback from people that they were going to reduce the amount of eggs they use, which allowed us to then go to other companies and other companies and other companies. And they saw the campaigns coming down the pipeline, and they're starting to also see the benefit of adding vegan options. They know that this will open up their market base. And in total, the different companies that we've worked with, there have been 25 million fewer eggs being used by these companies overall. It's 100,000 fewer egg-laying hens suffering in factory farms as a result of just a few of the campaigns that I mentioned here today. And those campaigns are only successful because of consumers like you who asked these companies to make that change. It takes an army to make these changes happen, and we can do it. We start by making a phone call to them and asking them to make a change, but it's only when they start to hear from other people that they recognize the importance of it, and that's when they're going to take it seriously. So I mentioned change.org earlier about Ben & Jerry's. That's a company that made a change because two people who live in the center of Virginia decided one day that they were going to start a change.org petition asking Ben & Jerry's to make vegan ice cream. And the company responded after people started to sign it, and then this petition started getting media attention. It's that simple, asking these companies to make a change. Change is not going to happen on its own. You have to get out there, even if it's uncomfortable. Some people think that it's uncomfortable to ask for change. You can do it by email, you can do it by phone call, you can sign a petition that somebody else has started, and we ask for these changes for her and for her and for her. We want these changes to happen for the animals, but we also know it's better for the environment, it's better for our health, and we can have a big impact. So this is another article that came out just a couple of months ago. It was a cover story And when you opened up the magazine, there's this huge image of a vegan meal, and the title of the article is "It Ain't Meat, Babe." And the article talked about plant-based options being on the rise. As research started out, this is the first sentence. As research firms churned out New Year's forecasts for this year, which is 2016, one theme became apparent. Plant protein is in. And what makes this article so significant is that it's the cover story of a meat industry journal called The Meeting Place. This is a print magazine that gets sent out to the meat industry nationwide. The cover story is how plant-based meat substitutes are evolving, and they're luring investors including Bill Gates, including the founders of Twitter. These people are getting behind these options because they know of the benefits involved. And the article goes on to say it will be up to meat processors to determine whether they can address the reasons consumers are looking for alternatives, or they can choose to enter the market for these products themselves. This is a shift that the meat industry, as I said earlier, they are changing the dynamics of their industry because they see that this is no longer a trend. This is in the mainstream. It's a shift that is bound to happen. So as you guys decide your meals every day, knowing that these are options readily available, it's better for your health, for the animals, for the environment. It's also really important to note that if you ever feel like you think there should be more options available somewhere, that you need to ask. You need to be the voice for these animals, because if you don't ask, these companies are not going to voluntarily make those changes. So, how many vegans does it take to change a light bulb? All of us. It doesn't even matter, because we want to change the world, and that's what we're doing by asking these companies to make these changes. So that's my conclusion today. The most important thing I want you to walk away with is that you need to ask for whatever changes you want to see in this world. It is up to you to ask. And if you don't ask, your silence is participating in the violence that these animals are enduring. But you have a voice, you can speak out, and even if you don't get an immediate yes, to get your friends, get your family, get social media involved and engage on these issues, and change will happen. And I appreciate you guys coming out today, and I'd love to answer any questions if you have them. We have talked with Amy's before. Yes.
There's a real good,
They have great options, and they've
Yes.
been offering more vegan options because they've had dairy in some of their products before, and they are shifting. And yes. Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and these bills generally are called ag-gag bills, and they are being introduced in different states, mostly states that have a strong agricultural, animal agricultural business model. And so broadly they're called ag-gag bills, but individually they're all a little bit different. There have been some bills passed that will basically make it a felony, as an example, to lie on your application. So if you omit information, it's considered a lie, and that's similar to what Iowa passed, which is the largest animal agricultural state in the U.S. And then other bills have been passed, including in Utah, which makes it a crime to even stand on a public sidewalk and take a photo of a factory farm, even if it's in public view, because you're standing on public property. These bills are constitutionally being challenged. There was one in Idaho that was it's now been removed from the books because it was constitutionally challenged. It was very invasive of First Amendment rights and constitutional rights. So it really depends on the construction of the bill. In North Carolina, most of these bills make it criminal. They criminalize some portion of being an undercover investigator, whether it's your application, whether it's you need consent from the farm owner to take a photo or a video, because it is technically private property, and there are certain trespass laws in each state that make each one of these bills requires a lot of research to fully understand the legal implications. But in North Carolina, they recently passed an ag-gag bill that is actually civil. So it provides factory farmers as well as all businesses a civil remedy to go after a whistleblower, someone who is exposing wrongdoing of some sort. And so as an undercover investigator of a factory farm, that company can then sue the whistleblower for damages, as well as go after whoever is associated with the whistleblower. That is new, it hasn't yet been tested, it just went into effect in January of this year, and a lot of questions whether or not that is challengeable once a case is brought forward. But the fact that these bills exist is a testament to the power of undercover investigation. Several years, I think it was in 2010, there was a study done by the Kansas University, the Agricultural Economic Department, did a study about the impact of press on these issues. Does media coverage of factory farming issues, whether it's a meat recall or an expose that gets national media attention, does this actually impact consumer behavior? They wanted to know. And what their study found is that yes, it does. In fact, if there's an undercover investigation inside a slaughterhouse killing beef cows, for example, or dairy cows and their meat is used for beef, then consumer patterns are shifting where consumers are not only buying less beef as a result of seeing that footage and hearing the story, they're buying fewer animal products overall. So the consumption of dairy and eggs and pork and chicken all goes down. So it doesn't matter which industry is exposed, it's an expose over the fact that these animals are being treated in this way. As a result of that study, which clearly showed a distinction between consumer patterns and these investigations, you saw a rash of these bills come out and be introduced nationwide, most of which have been defeated before being passed. And there's a coalition effort in the animal protection community to work to fight these bills so they aren't passed, so we don't have to go further to challenge them once they are.
Is your group involved in those legal challenges?
We haven't been yet involved in the legal challenges, and it's a tricky area because we have active investigators in the field, and so we don't want to put them at risk, but there are a lot of other organizations who are fighting them in the courtroom now, but we're part of the coalition to challenge them going before they're passed.
Thanks.
Yeah. It certainly is very questionable. I think the federal government has gotten more involved in food regulations for these animals. So that only impacts the dairy and the beef industries though, but anyone with a brain can get a spongy brain, and so that's what mad cow disease is their brain impacted basically by cannibalism. So in the meat industry in the US, the remedy the government has put forth is that if an animal cannot physically walk across the slaughter line, that animal cannot go into human consumption, USDA grade beef. And so there's an effort among a lot of slaughterhouses to any animal considered a downed animal might be a downed animal because of an injury, another illness, or it could be mad cow disease. So there are regulations that prevent the slaughter of animals who might have mad cow disease, but there isn't widespread testing to find out. And some smaller beef companies who are raising their animals in more of a pasture setting have asked the government about testing, and the government has declined them the opportunity to test. So there isn't widespread testing. It's not voluntary testing in the industry, and the solution so far has been to try to prevent those animals from going through the slaughter system. It's something other countries are more widely talking about, but we don't. You're right, we don't talk about it here in the U.S. very much. So I don't know what's going on because we don't talk about it. Yes. Yeah, they then get sent to what are known as rendering plants, and that is probably where pet food is coming from. Yeah. Yeah. Because pet food doesn't have to be USDA approved. Yeah, this is a great question, and you've done an extensive amount of research that I think most consumers haven't done. So that is a lot of credit to you for considering all those different factors. So So just quickly to start answering some of your questions, it is a confusing topic, is the majority of egg-laying hens in the United States are kept in tiny wire cages that are stacked upon each other, and they're kept this way their entire lives. They can barely even move. Some of the cages, as you're describing from the Willamette factory, are more modern, I guess you could say, where they have manure belts that take the feces away, but most of them don't. They're not that modern. They literally just drop on the cage below them maybe, or in a manure pit below. But those are facilities that are they're very intensive farming practices. They have very low impact in terms of worker wages because everything's automated, food's automated, water's automated. They have maybe one person a day walking through several different sheds where there could be over 1 million birds per shed depending on the size of it. These birds often die in the cages, so you have decaying carcasses in the same cages with living animals. It is truly one of the most archaic practices in factory farming today, and we're seeing a shift on this issue. The EU has already banned barren battery cages, and that went into effect a few years ago. There's a shift in this country today to push companies to stop using these battery cages altogether. So to make it even more confusing, barren battery cages are banned in the European Union, but they can use what's called a colony cage, which is a larger space that also provides a place to roost, dust bathing, a nest to lay eggs, because hens have a very strong drive to lay their egg in a nest, and that nest is usually in a protected area. In a battery cage, they have no place to do it. It is literally a wire floor that slopes down so that the egg will roll out to a belt that then takes the egg away. So battery cages they deprive these birds of many of their most natural behaviors. It is truly important that we have adopted this practice widespread in the US. So there is a shift to move to cage-free, and the first important thing to understand is that cage-free is not cruelty-free. It allows birds to engage in some of their natural behaviors. They can spread wings, they can move around, they can walk around. In terms of sanitation, a cage-free facility is only as good as it's managed. It does require more labor, so there will be higher costs because you need additional workers in the facilities to manage it, whereas a cage facility can almost operate with no one there. So a cage-free is a better life. It is definitely not cruelty-free. Another important factor to understand is no matter where you get your eggs from, 50% of these birds are killed on day one. They are ground up alive in hatcheries where the male birds that are born in the egg industry are worthless. Males don't lay eggs. And the chicken industry and the egg industry, while they used to be complementary, the chicken industry has changed the breeds of animals they raise to grow abnormally fast with a lot of meat on their bodies, and the egg industry is raising birds genetically manipulated to be more lean and smaller and overproduce eggs. So in nature, a hen would lay about maybe 2 dozen eggs a year overall. And in the egg industry, we've manipulated their bodies to produce over 250 eggs a year. So it highly depletes their nutrients. A lot of bones are breaking because calcium is leached out of their bodies to produce the calcium that goes around the egg. So egg production a lot of people think eggs are very natural to eat. The way in which we produce them, there's nothing further from the truth. It is so unnatural. But shifting over to what you're seeing in grocery stores, which is incredibly confusing to consumers, is the marketing of eggs. And it's not just eggs, but eggs is a great example of consumer confusion. So you can buy eggs in the grocery store, and sometimes it might even have a happy chicken on the top of it, a hen sitting in a nest with her eggs, or maybe running around outside with a barn in the background. And those images start to convey messages to us, even if those eggs are from battery cages, the tiny wire cages. Those messages, that imagery can go on those packages. You might even see phrases like naturally raised or animal friendly. You might even see pasture raised, cage free, free range.
And sometimes certifications from
Some certifications you'll see, but these animal welfare marketing on egg cartons is not regulated by the federal government. So there's no one from the federal government saying, yes, these birds really did go outside and they're free range. Or yes, these animals are living a cage-free life. There's no certification for that. In fact, we've been challenging the marketing of eggs. We have an active lawsuit against the USDA and the FTC, and as well as the FDA. So 3 different federal agencies trying to encourage them to regulate the egg industry and add proactive labels on there, like they already do in the European Union and different states in Australia, that would, on the cover of egg cartons sold nationwide, very clearly identify if these are eggs from caged hens, and it would define it. It would force companies to declare it on their packages. Years ago, when in the egg industry first started using battery cages, they actually thought promoting this is a good thing because they thought the eggs would be cleaner from cages. So they used to tout that they are eggs from caged hens, and then once they realized people didn't like to see that, they thought it was cruel, they started to remove it. And so the egg industry is well aware that from a consumer perception, it is not good to use cages, but it's efficient for them. Studies have shown that cage-free egg production is actually just 1 more penny per egg from a cost standpoint. But you're seeing higher costs in the grocery stores because those companies protein deficiency is like less than 3% of Americans, and it's usually because of a genetic problem of absorbing protein, not because they're not eating enough protein. But 98% of Americans, or maybe it's 97% of Americans, are fiber deficient, and you get fiber comes from plants. So we're talking about these issues from a health standpoint in the wrong way. Like, we think that protein is so important, whereas in reality, a lot of the health issues we're experiencing today are because we don't eat enough fiber. And fiber comes from plants.
So just to clarify things, are you saying that protein is protein, period? In other words, there's nothing particular to an egg protein that you can't get from, say, an almond?
Well, there are, so to get very specific, I would definitely recommend talking to a dietitian or a nutritionist, because there are different types of proteins. But what I'm saying is that while eggs are touted as the complete protein because they offer all these different types of protein, as long as we're eating a varied diet, we can eat all of those proteins. So we don't need to necessarily get it all from one source. We can eat a variety of foods, nuts, beans, plants, and we'll still be consuming all of those different proteins. So our body will process it as we're eating the complete number of proteins we're supposed to be eating.
Just as an aside, the brand Follow Your Heart has come up with an egg carton, and so you can actually use it for the mix that's in there.
Yeah, you can make omelets and scrambled eggs with it.
Baking.
Yeah, so depending on what you eat eggs for, some people use it in baking, which is used for different reasons. It's not to flavor the product. You can find alternatives readily available. It just depends on what you want the egg for. There's a company called the VEGG, V-E-G-G. They make a product that you mix with water and it creates an egg yolk. And it actually smells like an egg yolk. We've served it to people who actively eat eggs, and we've asked them, does this taste like egg yolk to you? And they all think it's egg yolk. So there are products out there, if you like the flavor, you can find foods that mimic the flavor. If you're using it for a specific purpose in a product, there are alternatives as well. Like, you can use bananas in baking, or you can use flax seeds. So it just depends on what the purpose of the egg and the product is.
What was that company that you said that made that?
VEGG, the VEGG. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And they make other products as well, but that's their signature product. Yeah. And that is starting to happen. These products are becoming more available. It's a little bit different, I think, because eggs often serve a purpose in the different foods that we eat. But that company, Hampton Creek, is making egg. Their whole goal is to make egg scramble that is plant-based. So you would just literally whip it up as if you're making scrambled eggs, and it will be healthier for you. It will be more cost efficient. And so their goal is to make it readily available in cafeterias nationwide as well, not just retail for consumers, but hopefully hospitals will switch over, colleges would switch over, and some food service companies are starting to switch over. There's Compass Group, which is the largest food company in the world. They serve hospitals and cafeterias. I believe it's every pancake now served by Compass Group is vegan. It's just pancakes. And so that is a shift that's starting to happen as well. But it's, again, I think it's just a matter of learning about it. It's a matter of understanding nutrition as well, and that we don't need as much protein as we think. But these foods are becoming more and more available. So keep your eye out, and we always love to tout them. And I know Eva talks about them a lot as well, so that people know that these options are available, and introduce them to your friends and family. Food is very powerful. So thank you guys all so much.